What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you, and one that definitely is going to invoke some discussion towards the end. We are going to go over the latest offering from Escuela Grind, Dreams and Algorithms. This also comes out on the 18th of October on MNRK Records. This band formed in 2016 in, I believe, both New York and Massachusetts. They're kind of like close to the border, I guess. Now, I believe this is their third album. They are not on the archives because they have been omitted for reasons. I can't see why in terms of at least the music, but whatever. We know how the archives operates, or rather doesn't. I became a fan of this band through some live performances and memory theater. We actually went over their last EP, Death Metal, which came out this year, and man, what a year this band has had. And we will get into that toward the end of this review because, yeah, I think it warrants some discussion. But for those that don't know, this band is sort of a blend of power violence, grindcore, death metal, and hardcore, and they're just outright vicious.
Yeah, I also got into this band by seeing them live. I think the first time we saw them was in Indianapolis at Heavy Hell 2022, roughly. I don't remember. But yeah, I saw them live, and I thought they were awesome, and I never really sat down and listened to their records until we did the last EP, and then that was cool, and then here we are.
So I was a big fan of Memory Theater. I thought that was just an absolutely vicious album, so I was looking forward to the follow-up to this, regardless of all the things that have happened in between that album and this album. And honestly, this one is possibly a bit different than the last one. I mean, it is still pummeling. Like, this band is just driven by, like, just neck-snapping grooves and what I would call blunt force trauma riffing. And with the guitar tone on this album, yeah, no, they're definitely doing some damage.
Big, nasty, crunchy riffs, and that guitar, I mean, sits right out front, and it is just powering over most of everything in the mix, and I mean, it's a good tone for it, so I get it.
Now, in comparison to Memory Theater, that one felt like it had way more grindcore influence. I feel like it was just kind of like a lot faster. You had, like, you know, a lot more songs that were more driven by blast beats, and then groove kind of came secondary, as in, like, you know, big breakdowns and such. This one definitely feels more focused on groove, the breakdowns, and maybe like some additional flavors in terms of like riff work, because I mean, still bass line, a lot of this is just hefty chug, lots of palm muting, lots of chromatic riffs. It's kind of like in that same vein as like Sanguisugabog, I would even say like Mortician to a degree, or even like hardcore bands like Knocked Loose. But as this album went on, there were definitely some things that showed up that I didn't think showed up as much on at least their last full length, and are possibly kind of carryovers from the Death Metal EP, which I thought was a banger.
Now, the last EP definitely touched on, well, death metal, as it was called, Death Metal, and I think some of that carried over into this record as well. Tracks like Moral Injury and Toothless both hankered more on death metal riffing versus like slam riffs or just these chuggy two-steps that this band is primarily known for. Moral Injury, I thought, actually had more of a gross kind of bendy crowbar style riff to it, whereas Toothless, I gotta say it, had some flat-out Morbid Angel moments.
Yes, it did. Like slow, menacing, where the most slimy of things live kind of riffs.
Yeah.
And honestly, like throughout that song, like, you know, while it definitely has like its like chuggy breakdowns and such, like there's just kind of like a 90s old school meat and potatoes death metal vibe that kind of carries throughout the entire song. And these are kind of like more nuanced ideas that kind of pop up in the songs because you still get a lot of what this band does. Like, there are tons of two-steps in here. I expected a lot of two-steps because that's kind of what they do, and they once again did that. And of course, there's also like these big slamming breakdowns, which, I mean, like instant, like dying fetus, stank face, like, all right, I'm gonna go hurt somebody, I guess. But there were some other wrinkles in terms of their formula in here, like Animus Multiform, thrashy riffs right out of the gate, like machine gun fast picking. And you know, when it comes down to the guitar style in here, like a lot of the picking isn't necessarily that fast. Like, it's, again, like a lot of like just downstroked fucking chunk, chunka chunk. No issue with that. Right. But hearing like some flat out like thrashy riffs, and then, you know, kind of leading into like thrashier blasts, straight up death metal blast, and even like some fun syncopated gallops, it kind of opened up the album a little bit, even when they went into like a little bit more along the lines of what you're kind of used to from, like, there's like a good D beat section in that song with like some more I guess you could say like punky riffs. There's even a lead in that song, which I can't remember if there was actually a lead on the last album. I don't know if there was room for a lead on the last album since the songs were so short. These songs often are like a little bit longer than the ones on the last album.
Yeah, between like 2.5 and 3 minutes. Like I was expecting, I don't know, grind songs were 30 seconds and we're done. But yeah, songs like Scorpion had a lot more dynamic to them. It wasn't just a collection of slam riffs. Like there was a good long intro coming into things, and then there was a good batch of like syncopated groove, and then it got half-timed and just it flowed a little bit better.
That song too also kind of leaned more on their hardcore influences. Like that opening riff on there, it sounds like the start of like, you know, maybe 3 or 4 Earth Crisis songs that I could think of. And I mean, that's a sound that I always welcome, but I also like the sort of give and take between like those hardcore grooves and just like that more hardcore sort of delivery in the vocals to the more like death metal sections that come up. It's not necessarily a blend of death metal and hardcore. It's kind of like 2 separate entities kind of meeting up and then fighting in the pit, I guess. There's lots of great syncopated riffs on there too. It's got an awesome closing groove on there. And sometimes the variety isn't just in the beats too. The song Planned Obsolescence, it's rhythmically kind of like one of the most fun songs on here. Like kicks in with a 2-step. I mean, that was to be expected, but how they transition into what I would say is a reggaeton beat, I thought was kind of interesting. Honestly, I hadn't heard like a reggaeton beat in hardcore since we went over the last Knock Loose album, which honestly, they did that part really well too. And it kind of adds this like fun, peppy step to it, and the vocal cadences around it kind of change a little bit as they're kind of like matching the sort of bouncy beat. And I don't know, like it was just sort of a fun song in terms of like all the transitions. Like, yeah, it still gets like absolutely brutal. In fact, the breakdown on there might be one of the heaviest breakdowns in this entire album, which is definitely saying something because all of them are heavy. Now, while this album definitely has some experimentation, or at least them sort of like broadening their sound a little bit, one of the things that, I don't know, like might not work as well for me showed up on Turbulence, which was released as a single. And when I heard clean vocals from this band, I was initially pretty shocked just because their music has never seemed like a welcome safe space for clean vocals at all. Nope. Clean vocals kind of sound like they would get the shit kicked out of them for showing up in one of their songs. And honestly, I would totally understand. But I kind of like the fact that they did try to branch out and experiment. And I really do like her vocals, but it's the fact that the riff behind it doesn't carry a melody to complement the vocals. And it kind of just bookends with cleans. Yep. Like, opens up with the cleans, we get into like just beat downs, 2-steps and grooves, and then it closes out with the cleans, which is kind of a refrain of the chorus. And I don't know, like it doesn't make like the biggest impact. And again, I think it's just kind of due to the riffing behind it.
Although I do like the riffing. It just doesn't mesh up with the clean vocals. To be honest with you, the riffs in Turbulence are probably, in my opinion, some of either A, the most catchy, or B, the most entertaining riffs on the whole record, because they're elongated a little bit more. It's not just a batch of chugs. Like, there's just a little bit more to the riff. Like, I don't want to say tremolos, but like some of the notes are elongated, some of the chugs are a bit more intricate. Like, there's a little bit of off-time groove going on there. So the riff is cool, but it's not conducive to clean vocals because, like Nick said, there's no melody going on there. Like, it's just kind of like, blah.
The riff that instantly popped in my head that was in kind of comparison just in terms of like how that opening riff is played and the one that the clean vocals show up on was, oddly enough, Anthrax's Keep It in the Family off of Persistence of Time. That opening riff, heavier than hell, chunky. And then as it kind of builds up, it changes the riff subtly to be like just a little bit more melodic to carry a tune. And then Joey comes on and sings his balls off, and it's like one of my favorite Anthrax songs. This one, I feel like if the riff had changed a little bit to really kind of like welcome in a more melodic vocal take, it probably would have worked better.
And that's not the only issue. One I had right off the bat, while the mix is fairly crunchy and huge and in your face, it also has a lot of mid-tone and a lot of high tone. And I just kind of found it to be shrill to the ear, like in the beginning of Concept of God, when they had that really loud feedback. And like, to me, that was most of the whole record, just kind of in my ear. It was just like, ah. And then another thing would be, is I get that this band is not about things like intricate riff patterns or, doing something more than just beating you over the face with a riff. But like the first 3 songs in particular, I found to be not only extremely repetitive, but very basic. Like there wasn't a whole lot going on there as far as riff or even groove was concerned. Like it just was chugs. And normally that's not a big complaint for me, but it was kind of boring.
Yeah, the first 3 songs, I feel like they're kind of just like pace setters, or at least like ones that are a little bit similar to the first album, and probably would fit a little bit better on there, because like as the album went on, the riffs got a little bit more, I don't know, like out of their lane, I guess you could say. I also had issues with the vocals, and it's a couple of different issues. It's not really anything to do with her delivery. Her delivery is fine. She absolutely owns live. I do think that she delivers too much at times. Like the vocals are constantly going, and she has a lot of rapid fire cadences on here where it's just a lot of vocals, to the point where when you get like isolated sections of just music, you're like, okay, cool, we get a little bit of break. And you're kind of just waiting for her to come in with a slightly different cadence. There might have been like one moment on here where I didn't necessarily like the vocal take, and that was on Always Watching You, where she unleashes a Sam Kinison scream. And I love Sam Kinison, but it didn't quite work. And I mean, in terms of a song being like outwardly like hostile and mean, and I mean, they kind of screamed Sam Kinison, but me being me, that was just a moment where I just went, it sounds like Sam Kinison. The other issue is the vocal level, or this might also kind of go with the guitars being maybe a little too out front. I feel like there are points where some of the vocals get a little bit buried. On Constant Passenger in particular, it really showed, because she does a vocal trade-off with Vince from the Acacia Strain, and that dude's got some absolutely like savage roars, and he felt like a little subdued on this one. Yeah, like you kind of overpowered a bit. And generally, I'm not used to hearing him sound remotely quiet on anything he's ever appeared on. And to that degree, same with their actual singer, because like you listen to him live, her vocals power over a lot of shit. But overall, honestly, I dug this album. Like I thought it was a pretty solid offering. It's a little bit different. I would say a little bit more accessible, but not in a way where they're kind of like reaching for like radio play, or like, we're going to play Rocklahoma next year and it's going to be a blast hanging out with 3 Doors Down. But yeah, overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I think it's a pretty solid offering. It delivers on what they did before, and it also kind of opens up the playbook a little bit. Not too much. Like this is still primal, chuggy. It is built on breakdowns and grooves and blast beats, and every song is pretty much in your face and violent as hell. But there are some interesting little wrinkles in the formula that I think kind of open it up. And when they do kind of like fiddle around a little bit more with like some slightly different riffs, or maybe lean a little bit more towards one of the many different styles that I think influences them, I think it gets a little bit more interesting, because the pacing of the album changes, the variety on it changes, and it becomes like a little bit more of like a musical journey rather than a collection of just absolutely savage breakdowns. The clean vocals I thought were interesting. Like I would just like to hear them with like a different kind of riff behind them. I feel like there's like an avenue to actually pursue. There's some interesting riffs in that song that were like a little bit more dissonant, where maybe that kind of like clean vocal passage might have worked there. Yeah. I don't know. But I mean, I'm not saying like completely abandon them. And I like some of the fun rhythmic stuff. Like again, that reggaeton beat was not what I was expecting in here. Overall, I thought this was a pretty solid album. If you're a big fan, again, of Knocked Loose, Sanguisugabog, I would even say like Jesus Piece too. Actually, Vomit Forth, we just went over. And like very similar to this. Yeah, check that out too. But yeah, check this out. Pretty solid album.
I'm going to go ahead and give it 3 stars. I thought it was pretty good. It is jam-packed full of big old beefy chugs and big old gnarly grooves. There's no shortage of that whatsoever. This record is definitely heavy. It did take a moment to get going. I will admit that the first few tracks I was just kind of like, this is alright. It did open up more as we went on. I was not expecting things like thrash. I was not expecting the sinister riffs in Toothless, nor was I expecting the dissonant riffs in Turbulence. So it did open up a little bit more, and they did start to play with some dynamics. The overall tone of the record, just that hum and that hiss that's in this entire album, that mid-range tone, I don't know, maybe it's because my ears are older and shot after years of concerts and standing up near speakers and whatever, that it kind of gets me, but it threw me off a tad bit. The clean vocals are cool. I would be more interested to see her attack clean vocals in a song with some melody, because she can sing. Like, I heard it. She was on key for whatever little bit of melody that was in that song, so it's there. I just don't think that that was necessarily the song to do it in, or moreover, the approach overall. Like, I'd be curious to see what happens in a different setting. But nonetheless, this record is packed full of awesome grooves, awesome breakdowns, bunches and bunches and bunches of fun riffs. I'd recommend checking it out for sure. If you like bands like, well, anything Nick mentioned on top of it, probably some old school Suffocation, which is definitely found throughout this. Maybe a little pinch of Tribal Gaze, definitely some Mortician. I don't know. Probably just check it out for yourself, see what you think.
Or don't, because apparently this band has garnered some controversy, and again, I kind of alluded to it. This year has been really up and down. Like, it started off really up. In fact, I saw their stock pretty much rising. Everyone was absolutely stoked for that death metal EP. And then some news broke while they were on tour about some lascivious behavior, I guess we'll say that.
There you go.
Trying to avoid other terms there. Maybe that's what Turbulence was about. I don't know. But, all this news broke, and there was really nothing resolved out of it. Like, it became, the persons, that worked for the band said this about the band, and then the band said this about the persons who worked for them, and then they would snipe back and forth, and then information was exchanged. I don't know how much was actually substantiated, and then the whole thing kind of just disappeared from all the metal tabloids. But what followed was just a wave of hatred for this band, and I follow them on Facebook, and anytime they made a post, there was always someone making all sorts of shitty posts about them.
Yeah.
It kind of spiraled into a whole bunch of stuff about the members and their personalities, or just the extra shit they've done. Like, I saw someone chime in about the drummer being a Freemason, and since I don't subscribe to Conspiracy Theory Dumbass Weekly, I don't give a shit about that dumb shit. I don't, quite get all the hate. Again, nothing was substantiated. And believe me, I know tons of people out there have forgiven bands for doing shit that was actually substantiated.
Right.
So I don't know. This band is kind of, I don't know, in limbo, essentially. I mean, they seem like they're still out there touring. They're still out there doing their thing. But I don't know. When it comes down to controversy, there's so many question marks around it that I can't really take a side. But I'm just going to go over the music and report what I actually know, which is they put out a new album.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, too. Of course, shit happens all the time, and of course, when things come to light, especially when you're in the limelight to begin with anyway, and things come to light, and they say, well, they did this, and they did this, and they did this, and they did this, and this. It's weird, because there was a huge scuffle for a long time, and everybody was like, fuck Escuela Grind, and then everything just disappeared. And then you didn't hear anything. I don't know what to think. I like these guys. I like the music. That's kind of where I stand.
And I don't know. I think part of what plays into this also might be the fact that they became kind of like a hype band. There was a lot of hype built up about them. They really hadn't released that many albums. I think they had 2 to their credit and some EPs. And for some, that's not enough. And at least in a more underground form of music, when you get popular, somehow that's a really bad thing, and that means you've sold out or offended the metal gods in some way. You clearly offended someone at Metal Archives, but we actually don't care about their feelings anyway. I don't know. I don't really get what's going on here, but I don't know. Hopefully, they can just kind of move forward and keep doing their thing. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, just because, again, they went from media darlings to media pariahs in, wow, dude, a few months. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships now. If you would like to join, there is a join button down below. It is only 99 cents. We are only offering so far a members only stream, which we will eventually do probably in November, just because this month is just loaded with releases. In fact, we're doing 6 reviews this week. But we also have a booger troll, which is a thing that we did a while ago, and that is our token emoji until I find something else stupid to put in there.
Out of all the things we could have typed into the prompt, we typed in booger troll.
We are smarted.
Yes.
Very smarted. But yeah, this is our new way of supporting the channel, namely because StreamYard is raising their prices. We definitely want to do more streaming in the future. We also still have our store available, thrallsmetal.com. It is linked down below. If you're looking for our t-shirts, both old and new, and the hats, they are all there. And yeah, if you want to help us out either way, we would appreciate it.
And tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal, as always. Constant album reviews, discography rankings, multiple discussion forums, multiple segments, states of metal, is it metal, is it not metal, Nick's never-ending collection updates. There's a ton more coming. We've got some plans for 2025. That's going to rule. Let's finish out this year first. We couldn't do it without you guys. We appreciate all of our subscribers, our family, our friends, everybody that has supported us along the way to help make Thralls of Metal into something monumentally larger than I think we ever thought it would be, ever. So thank you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Looking forward to overloading you guys with more content. So one more big thank you because of all your rulage, and we will catch you later.